speech, as BJ explained, is on conquering the cold call. It's speech number 2 from the Advanced Manual, Speaking to Persuade. There's 3 objectives of the speech, and the reason I didn't give him more of the objectives is because the first part of the speech is actually to talk about conquering the cold call and what is the process and what are the objectives in it. So conquering the cold call is really about figuring out what it is that the person that you're talking to has a need for, what their needs are. The second part of the speech is to look at, demonstrate it with a victim or a volunteer. We like to say victim around here. And the third part of the speech is to kind of summarize that. So first, to explain what conquering the cold call and using that, the Toastmasters manual to persuade somebody in that aspect is, you really, like I said, you look at what their needs are. What is somebody trying to accomplish? What are their goals? What are they passionate about? And then you step back and you say, well, these are the services that I have to offer. This is what I bring to the table for this person. And somehow, you have their needs and you have your services. You try to connect the dots somehow. So, if you have more than one service, and maybe they fit one of them a little bit better than some of the other services. But really, if you're trying to emulate some of the great salespeople or some of the great businesses out there, and you're trying to have a lot of personal integrity, what you do is you try to not just push off your product or your service onto somebody. You actually try to solve a need that they have or come up with some sort of solution for them. So today what I'd like to do is to demonstrate that using a volunteer that we have, volunteer from the audience that I happen to know. Greg Geikema is somebody that I've known for quite a while in the club here. He's a frugal guy. I'm a frugal guy. My company's in personal finance. I help people with investments, taxes, and personal financial planning. So naturally, we've struck up a conversation a couple times about investments and frugality. And I often speak about it up here. So I thought he would be the perfect person to bring up here today. And so with that, let me welcome Greg. Now, before we get started, I should point out that this is completely made up. I may have some idea of what he's using, but I'm using completely made up figures, made up things, so that it's tailored a little bit towards my speech. So, Mr. Geikema, how are you doing?
Good, thank you.
It's good to see you, Greg. How's Amy doing?
I think she's trying to emulate me.
In that what?
In my trying to develop communication skills for Toastmasters, whatnot.
She wants to be able to.
She's actually going to college to become a child development LCC.
So she wants to be able to communicate better, and maybe you two would be able to communicate better at home, and everything would be peachy. Well, I wanted to talk to you today. I'm curious, how are you doing? I know you have a daughter. How old's your daughter now?
6.
And how are you doing towards like saving for her college or something? Have you thought about it?
We've got some money set aside, not as much as we should. Under $1,000, if you want to know, but more than some people have.
Well, that's a start, and most people haven't even started. Myself, I've started, but I'm also slowly progressing. Along with communicating, learning to communicate in college, I assume that part of a good, strong relationship, is you want to have solid financial situation, because that's probably the #1 cause of stress in people's lives. I'm curious. You and I have talked about this before, and you're using, isn't it, A.G. Edwards?
Edward Jones.
Edward Jones. Oh, okay. And how are they doing?
They're doing a good job.
Are you happy with them?
I probably don't use them as much as I should. I could use them more often. But I get busy, so make an appointment once a year or twice a year. They call me and remind me to come in.
Yeah. Okay. How are you doing towards like your retirement goal? So that when you're talking with Amy, hey, we're this close.
It's so far away that it's hard to tell from the figures.
Well, I mean, last time we spoke, you said you had, it was like good job. You're happy with them. I was just curious, if you're, how close you are, do you think, towards that retirement goal and towards financial freedom?
Oh, I think we're doing okay. Right. I'm pretty frugal. I think that's why he called me pretty conservative. We did go to Disneyland and Disney World last couple of weeks ago, and so I know that there's people out there that can take your money. But I think we're doing okay. Looking at the numbers, I mean, it's a long ways out, so it's easy to think, well, I can just spend money now because I'll have enough, but you have to be careful.
Right.
And it's just hard to figure out exactly how much you need.
Yeah. Has your guy done any calculations about that?
He did one last year.
And are you, were you happy with it? Because usually, I think A.G. Edwards guys, they use American funds, is that right?
Yep.
And they're a pretty good mutual fund company. Is it doing okay? I mean, we've gone down the last 5 weeks. I don't know if you've been watching it.
From what I understand, because I'm gonna retire, I'm 38 now, so let's say I retire at 60, 62, somewhere in there. If you make 1% more or 0.5% more, that could be a big difference.
Yes.
So you need to pick the right investments.
Yes, that's true. So I'm curious, because you use American funds, and I'm familiar with American funds, do you know how much you actually paid your advisor last year? No.
Not a clue.
Most people don't. That's because they don't actually pay them anything. It's the American funds that pays them. American funds has a 5.75% commission. So on your $50,000, they probably made almost $3,000, $2,750 around there. Did you know that?
I thought it was probably like 1%.
Well, 1% is what you pay American funds,
Okay.
and then they in turn pay your advisor. So sometimes when those numbers are brought out, you can say, okay, my guy did a good
Yep.
job. Or, man, he only spent a half hour with me. Yeah, I paid him $3,000. That was kind of a waste. So I'm just curious, did you know that American Funds also charges maybe almost a full percent on internal expenses?
That might be the figure that I thought.
That's the one you were thinking about. So that's what, $500 a year you're paying American Funds? How would you feel if I could bring that $3,000 down to $1,500?
I'd buy you lunch.
How about if I made it deductible?
Oh, wow.
And so you could actually, after taxes, maybe only pay $1,000 or $1,100.
Yeah, it sounds good. I'm interested.
And then, as far as that 1% that you're paying American funds, if it was return-wise, it made sense. What about if we could bring that down from $500 down to less than $100?
It's interesting.
We should probably get lunch. Because there's a couple ways to work with an advisor. One way is for them to earn a commission, and then another way is for them to be paid hourly, like an attorney does. And that's how I work.
Okay.
So fees are completely transparent. You know how much you're paying me, and I look at internal expenses, and because you know how much you're paying me, I want to do a good job because otherwise you can fire me. And so I'll make sure that the internal expenses are fully disclosed, and you'll be fully aware of how you're doing towards your goals. So that's one of the services I offer. It's what's a financial plan. It costs $1,500. So would you like to at least talk about that?
Oh, yes.
Okay, great.
But only because I know you and I trust you so much.
My personal integrity? Well, thank you very much, Greg.
Oh, thank you.
So that's the, thanks, BJ. That's my impromptu speech on interacting with somebody as far as how I work with people about sales. Now, usually I don't call people up, cold call them. Typically, they come to my website and they ask me, so it's a little bit awkward for me to talk to somebody and bring out that information. But the objective of this speech is to show that when you're speaking to persuade somebody and you're trying to sell something that costs $1,500, if I would have come out and said, it's $1,500, you guys would have said time out. I gotta go somewhere. So the objective of this speech is to try to get around some of those costs and to maybe bring out some of the needs that he has, which wasn't really done as clear as probably I could have, because he was coming to me, not necessarily as somebody coming to me, but we were just doing this impromptu. So having said that, he said it himself, 1% over 30 years can make a very big difference, and we actually showed him how he could maybe lower that quite a bit, the 500 down to $100, and then the commissions that he's paying, which he doesn't necessarily realize, take them in half. So that's his need, the service that I offered, and then how they kind of matched up. Terrible at closing, I'll be completely honest with you. I always just say go home and think about it and call me, because I'm not somebody to sit in the room like that. So in the objectives of the speech, it never really says this is how you do the closing. It just says that you need to match up that need with the services that you have. And then, so that's the summary of what we had. Obviously you saw our situation, which was pretty rough cut. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Mr.
Thank you, Rich. And all of you have evaluation sheets. Please feel free, even the